Well, hello there, gentlemen. How are we doing today?
Oh,
Doing good. Doing good. Ready for next week.
The flat earthers. That's right. Next Monday we're doing flat Earth, and we're gonna have a lot of fun with that one because there will be a brand new Starship launch for us to take a look at the video of. That's what I want to do.
Oh,
oh,
Yeah. But that is not today. Today, I want to talk a bit about the keys to the future. So, I've dominated the ETNs for the past couple weeks, and I swear I will get off of your guys' screens and stop talking about boring, dry stuff because that's what we talk about here. Um, but so if the show I did 2 weeks ago or led 2 weeks ago, that was kind of about the past. Then last week was about kind of about the present, choice. Every choice you make is always made in the present. You have choices you have made and you have choices you will make, but when you're making a choice, you're making it in the present. So today we're going to talk a little bit about the future, and by a little bit I mean a lot. Uh, but to do that, I need to go back to the past a little bit because what we're talking about today begins in the 60s and the 70s. And
are you doing Marty McFly with it on us?
yeah, we have to go. Yeah, we have to go back to the future. Um, but sort of the idea that possessed the Western culture in the 60s was this idea that the human mind could be perfected. And you heard my dad talk about a little bit about that in the episode 2 weeks ago. I'm not going to talk too much about why and all the culture that was going on at the time, but the key point is that you have to understand about everything that's going on today is a result of this idea that we could use science and technology to perfect the human mind. But this creates a bit of a problem. Those damned Christians.
well, we also could perfect society.
Yep.
Um, just as a simple analogy, a war on poverty. We
Yep.
can erase poverty. But okay, so we were trying to perfect something. What did Jesus say?
Uh, the poor you will always have with you.
Okay,
So you're saying we can't perfect the poor? We can't perfect the
No,
homeless?
well, it's just look at everything around you. All these programs to perfect the family, perfect society, correct poverty. Everything's more, well, not every, well, the nuclear family, the basic structure of society is in disarray. It's in more and more chaos, more degeneracy, more single mommies, fatherless homes, more criminals, so on and so forth.
Right. So all these programs to perfect society, and what have they done? Destroyed society.
essentially.
So
So is it the same thing with the mind? All this effort to perfect the mind is the modern mind less educated, less literate, less
mm,
enumerate, more solipsistic,
and
uh,
sophistic.
sophistic. Are people generally shallow thinking? The masses, I mean, the average populace, they're kind of shallow thinkers.
Well, turns out there's a reason for that. And the reason for that is in order for this is particularly on the boomers, although we'll get into Xers in a bit here. They had to adopt they adopted three distinct philosophies to do this. And I did say that we're going to talk philosophy. But I want to point out here that I'm an engineer. I am not interested in talking philosophy for the sake of philosophy. My interest in philosophy, hi Nick. My interest in philosophy is its practical applications to the society we live in. And there are practical applications of it. So if you think that I'm going to get into some philosophical debate over these about, why I'm wrong about this or that, I'm not interested in the philosophy as written by the person. I'm interested in how it's applied to today's society. So those three philosophies were structuralism, Gramscianism, so that'd be Antonio Gramsci, and Nietzscheanism. Of course, most people here do know Friedrich Nietzsche, and we're going to get into that. But I'm going to give some quick definitions here. Structuralism, specifically post-structuralism, is a philosophy that questions the objectivity or stability of various interpretive structures that are posited by structuralism and considers them to be constituted by broader systems of power. Okay. So when they talk about interpretive structures, what they're really talking about is language and the malleability of language.
Are you talking about like Wittgensteinianism?
That's one aspect of it. But
Okay. Okay.
so Gramscianism is the philosophy of cultural hegemony. Okay. So this he describes how, you know,
Do people even know what hegemony is?
okay, well, I can define it because I had to read it for this episode. It's a domination of the state through through non-military force. So that's about as far as I'll go with that one. There's a lot more to it. But Gramsci describes how the state and the ruling capitalist class, he's a Marxist, guys. The bourgeoisie use cultural institutions to maintain their wealth and power. But he drew a lot of his insights from beyond the Marxists. He was a big fan of Machiavelli, for example. And there's evidence, but not strong evidence, that he was familiar with the works of Nietzsche. Nietzsche had died by the time he was doing his stuff. So Nietzscheanism is the philosophy of Nietzsche. Now, there's a fun little fact, and I've talked with multiple philosophers. These are guys who actually went to school for philosophy. As best we can tell, Nietzscheanism is not actually a coherent philosophy. And I know this is going to piss people off. And the reason we say that is because, and Nietzsche actually talks about this in his works, he was much more interested in the observation of humanity. He loved observing things. He was a huge fan of Freud's psychological works. And he made some very incisive observations about human nature, but they're kind of grab bag. And if you've ever read his writing style, he will just drop an idea almost midstream. There we go. Oh, here. So is that better, guys? So someone's saying my mic is cracking.
I didn't hear it. But.
You didn't hear it? Okay. Well, I pulled it away a little bit. So, but he had lots of opinions about his observations, but they don't really form into a coherent philosophy. And to date, no philosopher since has been able to elucidate a coherent philosophy out of his work. Many have tried. Many. And these are highly intelligent men. No one's been able to do it. Now, what ended up happening in the 1960s is neither Gramscianism nor Nietzscheanism provide a generative theory or framework for the transhumanist belief that you can perfect the human mind. So they had to graft structuralism onto both of them. So you have Gramscian structuralism and you have Nietzschean structuralism, or specifically of the French variety. So if you probably heard these names before. Oh, darn it. Maybe that's my voice because I've pulled it away pretty far. Either that or YouTube's being unfriendly to me. Oh, you guys are on X. I wonder if it's an X problem. Yeah, okay. The YouTubers can hear us, and X might be having issues today, guys. So the problem is, so Gramscianism has none of the transhumanism in it. It predates pretty much all of that. Gramscianism is mostly concerned about, government and colleges and, institutions of culture. So it's insufficient to describe the transhumanism that possessed the ideology of the 60s and 70s, the boomers. Nietzscheanism, being an incomplete philosophy, just needs something. And the benefit that structuralism, and particularly post-structuralism, provide to Nietzsche is that it slots well with Nietzsche's concept of perspectivism. Now, perspectivism is a word that you guys probably aren't familiar with, but you might be familiar with this other term, my truth.
Yeah, subjectivism.
Right. Perspectivism is a form of subjectivism. It basically says that my perspective is mine and therefore it's my truth. Because if there is no and Nietzsche actually very specifically rejects the concept of objective truth.
Subjectively.
Right.
Yeah, right.
Nietzsche's all over the place, guys. It's a hard thing to read, which ironically means that most people who read it, they kind of tend to just read the bits that they like and then they stop. So
we see perspectivism all the time. Women
Yes, we
use
do.
it in particular. A guy will make some general statement. Could actually be a stereotype, which is a generalization. And she'll say, well, we can't know that. From my perspective, it's this way. And what about this exception? So by coming up with an exception, you can throw out the whole generalization, and then you can't know anything about that. So therefore, you can make up whatever you want because it's my truth from my perspective.
Or NAWAL.
A bit. So perspectivism just cannot lead to any consensus because no consensus is possible because everybody is expected to view that thing from their own perspective and not consider anybody else's perspective.
Well, this makes total sense from the Nietzschean perspective. If the will to, or the Nietzschean philosophy, if the will to power is the ultimate, force of humanity, then of course my perspective is the only one that matters. It has to be. It's the only way I can exercise my power is through my own perspective.
Right. And if my power is greater than your power, then I win. Then your perspective doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I've proved my perspective to be the correct one.
Does this sound like the modern left? And we'll get into the right later, but does this sound like the modern
Sounds
left?
very Foucault-like.
It's
sounds
incredibly
like Foucault.
Yeah. Okay, it is definitely an X problem. I'm going to post the link to the YouTube video in the chat so you guys can follow along. Hey Nick, it's on your Twitter. Right. Here I will pull this up, but I don't know if you guys can copy that or. Nick's going to post it on the
Send
link
me the Here, I'll just post it from YouTube to my X.
Yeah.
All right.
We're on Nick's X feed, so he'll have to do this. While he's doing that, yes. So it's Foucault. It's Derrida. Oh. And there was in the 90s there was a guy named. Here, I'm gonna mute Nick for a second. And in the 90s there was a guy named Deleuze. These are all French philosophers, and let me see. It was 1964 that Foucault published a paper, and I'm gonna see if I can't find the name of it real quick here. But Foucault actually published a paper. Nietzsche et la philosophie, which is just French for Nietzsche and the philosophy. So Foucault's assertion is that Nietzsche is the philosophy, that there is no greater philosophy than Nietzsche. And this is the left. And we'll get into this later in a bit here, but there you go, Steve. Excellent. So so what happened in particularly in the 70s, the 60s, all of the boomers kind of agreed that you could perfect the human mind and that it was a moral imperative to try to do so. But they disagreed on how. So the Gramscian structuralists, they went for the institutions. They mobbed the education system. They took over the government, the instruments of government. They took over the institutions, just like Gramsci says to do. He was very clear on this. Okay.
I think Francis Schaeffer talked about that in his book, How Shall We Then Live? That was like back in like the, I think, early 80s.
Yeah, it would have
late
been
70s, early 80s.
It would have been pretty obvious what had happened to Francis at that time. And so, I mean, they what they really want to do, of course, was to take over the education system because that's how you train human minds. Therefore, that's how you perfect human minds. But they had to take over the government because the government might stop them if they didn't. So you just own it all. And it fits with the Gramscian philosophy of owning the cultural institutions. Yay, great. So, and also, what's another cultural institution that gets a bad rap these days, and in my opinion, rightfully so? The media. So the Gramscians took over Hollywood, and they are a huge impact on modern culture. Don't get me wrong. The Nietzscheans had to go a different way. And and because Nietzscheans believe that the only way to perfect humanity, and that this was one of Nietzsche's goals, was to produce the Übermensch, the overman.
Superman.
Yes.
Superman.
And so competition is how you do it. Well, government institutions and college institutions don't really offer a great platform to do that. But what does offer a great platform to do that is business. It's the idea you take a great mind and you allow them to come forth and prove their utility, and then you shower them with resources so that they can go even more. That is the driving theory behind the entire venture capital system that we have today. And then, of course, when bad ideas fail, you cut them loose and reject, and they have to go. Well, I've talked to a lot of failed VC businesses. Those guys go get jobs. They have to go right back down to where they were before. So they're cut off. It's very Nietzschean. And we're not going to focus too much on the Gramscian structuralists, but except till we get to the end, because you need to understand who they are and what they did and why they did it, because this episode is actually about the future. And so we will get there.
Yep. And then they're like the Chicago School, the woke kind of movement.
Yes. Now, we are going to focus particularly on the Nietzsche structuralists, the Nietzschean crowd, for a couple of reasons. In part because even the Gramscian structuralists import some ideas from Nietzsche, particularly the structuralist idea that structure implies systems of power. So we have to acknowledge that even there Nietzsche plays. It's just not to the same extent that it does over on the you guys often hear, oh, it's the uniparty, oh, it's the we can't tell the difference between the two parties. Well, this is actually why. All sides believe in Nietzsche. All sides believe in the perfected humanity through science and technology. All sides believe in some variant of structuralism. They pick and choose the parts they like, but they both require it. So the philosophies that drive your modern politics are very, very similar. They just disagree on whether the competition, on whether it should be intense competition or cultural hegemony.
Well, we see in politics, we see a lot of compromise. I mean, compromise is always necessary, but they'll change their approach or belief if it means they get to keep power. Nothing is more important than maintaining your power. You have no principles that are more important than the importance of you maintaining power and staying on top.
Yeah. Well, Nietzscheanism at its core is the desire to accomplish something without outside or external help. You know, it's the only way you can prove your superiority over that of someone else. And
It's like rugged individualism to an nth degree.
It's an absurdist interpretation of rugged individualism. Yes. And so,
well, there's also the concept of meritocracy.
Oh, we'll get into that.
Yeah, I mean, that's the capable will rise to the top and be rewarded. And therefore, if I rise to the top, I therefore am of the merit that proves my merit because I'm at the top.
Steve's jumping ahead in my notes here a little bit.
Okay, well, you stay on your track.
Well,
it'll be a foretaste to where we're going.
Yeah, it is. So one of the key points that I want people to take away from this is that to the modern Nietzschean, the will to power is sacred. And I am using religious language here because that's how they treat it. The will to power is sacred. Therefore, not only is the exercise of power a moral good, it is a moral imperative. I don't know, Nick, what do you think about that?
Well, yeah, well, that is their ethos, even though they say that I don't think they have an ethos. Their ethos is self. So whatever's best for self, which is your will to power, your exertion over everyone else.
Okay. So would it logically...
The ego is king.
Yeah. So would it not follow then that to exercise power as a moral imperative means that the moment one can exercise their power, one must exercise their power?
I wouldn't see why they wouldn't, if that's their Nietzschean, if they follow a Nietzschean philosophy, and that is the concept is that you must exercise your power against the, what do you call them in your notes, the reactors, or is that the that was the article I think, yeah. Talks about those who have power and then those who are the reactors, so the aggressive versus the passive.
Oh yes.
If I have power, I'd be a fool not to use it because I believe in power. And if I have power and I don't use it, that would mean power is useless. But I know it's not. So if I have the power, obviously I have the merit to have the power because that's why I have it.
Yep.
And so I get to use it for my own benefit. My own benefit is to gain more power.
So Steve, what you're saying is that to exercise power in the furtherance of one's own power is the highest moral aim one can pursue.
I think that's what I said.
We might be sharing notes before the show, guys. So there's an interesting thing that happens, and we've talked about the the will of the one becomes the pursuit of one. We've talked about how that your ego becomes the sole focus of your this exercise of the will to power, but it has an interesting effect on society. I can't trust anybody because I know that the moment that they can exercise power against me, they will. And so I have to assume that they will. At the same time, I have to be looking for the opportunity to exercise my power in the furtherance of my own power. So I have to spend a lot of time doing two things: watching my back to see who's coming at me with the knife, at the same time that I'm watching everyone else's back to see who I can stab and take out.
Do you remember? Did you guys ever watch the movies or the TV show The Highlander?
I've seen
I
some
actually,
of it.
I did not. I have a different
Okay,
TV show for this, but
so the premise of The Highlander is he's an immortal, and there are a select number of immortals in the world. And the only way to kill an immortal is to cut off his head. And I think their motto is, in the end, there can only be one. So they're fighting with each other, but you can have an immortal as an ally. But the recognition is someday they're not going to be your ally, and you're going to have to fight and chop their head off. And in the end, there can only be one. Not really Nietzscheanism.
that's pretty yes. There was another TV show that I grew up with. Was not a very well-known show. It was called Andromeda. It was actually a Gene Roddenberry show that he wrote, he designed in the 1960s, ironically. But there's a subspecies of human called Nietzscheans, and one of the main plot points of the show is that the Nietzscheans overthrow the government because they had the power to do so. And of course, the Nietzscheans then start fighting amongst themselves to be in control, and they end up destroying themselves in the process. And the government does, of course, fall, but the Nietzscheans can't take over because they're too busy fighting for who gets to control the world after. And then they just they still exist, but they don't have. They spent all their time exercising the power to the point where they had no power left to exert over this universe. I thought that was a fascinating look into the Nietzschean philosophy, and the main character of the show actually understands Nietzschean philosophy very well and is constantly using it against one of the Nietzschean characters to get what he wants. And that's a
It's like an
topic.
eternal state of war.
Well, it has to be, because you're constantly fighting to see who's the best, who's on top. So it's the same thing what I was talking about with society. You're always looking out for who's going to stab you in the back, and you're always looking for who you can stab in the back to achieve more power. But doesn't this sound like something that might create a low trust society that's high in disorder?
Oh yeah.
Does that not sound like one of the main complaints about modern society today?
Especially it's in the South too. That's especially like a Yankee thing. Like, yeah, they wonder why you're being friendly to them or being cordial. They always suspect you want something.
Well,
Like, what's in it for you? What
yeah.
are you going to get out of me? Where's the knife?
Well, because
Basically.
because your society becomes about the pursuit of power above all else. You can't pursue a civilization when you're pursuing power for yourself, can you?
Not really.
Just power for power self now. So,
The word patriarchy comes to mind. Now, the feminists are fighting against evil patriarchy. I think they are attributing Nietzschean values to the patriarchy, that it's power exercised for the sake of power. When true patriarchy means you are head of your family and you care for the others under your hierarchy, and you have to look out for the goodwill of others. So when we talk about patriarchy, we're thinking about the responsibility and the well-being of others. When people attack us, oh, the evil patriarchy, they think we're seeking power for power's sake.
But Steve, you said something interesting. You said that's what the women are doing. That's what the feminists are doing.
Yeah.
So are you saying that the feminists view this as a power structure, that this is a feminine concept?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I want to verify that with you, because one of my points in my notes here is, and okay, guys, we're half an hour in. Hopefully our friends aren't watching anymore. Hopefully we've dried their ears out, because I'm about to say something that's going to piss off a lot of people, particularly in the red pill. Nietzscheanism is feminine. Nietzscheanism, it's perspectivism. It denies the concept of an objective truth. Okay, that is core to Nietzschean philosophy. You cannot get away from this. Okay.
So it's solipsistic a bit, or is it?
Strictly speaking, the concept of might makes right is sophistic. It's a sophistry. It's
So-
actually a tautology, which is a different.
So the concept of just become a high value man, is that Nietzsche? Be the man of merit, rise to the top, develop your power, and then use it.
Yeah. Well, why are feminists obsessed with power? Why is it the feminists that are obsessed with power?
Because they want to, they're trying to compete against power to gain power, but not for order's sake, but for the benefit of themselves.
But for the benefit of themselves. They want power for the benefit of themselves.
They don't trust someone else to guide them
Oh.
for their own best interests. So therefore, they want the power so they can do it themselves.
Low
But
trust
the
society.
thing is, yes, but when women, this is a general statement. When a woman gets the power, she uses it to destroy. She destroys her family. She removes the father from the family, therefore destroys her kids. Oftentimes, she's just mentally, what is it? Or emotionally unhinged. and then you look at where she ends up. She squandered her youth and her fertility, and now she's older and she thinks there's going to be a man out there. Now, as she gets older, men just don't pay attention to her. So she grows old, theoretically alone, with boxed wine and cats. So isn't that destructive behavior?
Yes, it is. And does this behavior not sound very similar to the sort of destruction that Nietzscheanism can and does lead to?
You also see it in the red pill.
Oh yeah. Oh. I did just call Nietzscheanism feminism. So
I don't know what you guys see. You see, they say, "Oh, the manosphere, the manosphere. Oh, accelerate the, whatever." just enjoy the decline. We'll talk about that in a minute, or later. But I'm not saying alphaness is wrong. I'm not saying power itself is wrong, but power for power's sake, for ego self, can only destroy. And so when you adopt Nietzscheanism,
Oh.
you're necessarily going to come into conflict with the other men, and you're not going to raise, generally, a cohesive brotherhood of men. Even though many do, and I like that. I like that they're doing that. I think that's good. It's just inconsistent with Nietzscheanism.
So they preach
And so
Nietzscheanism, but they don't really practice it.
But they do with the infighting, because power for power's sake, they have to be the
okay.
top dog.
Yes.
It's inconsistent.
Nick got exactly where I wanted to go. Thank you, Nick. The Go ahead, Steve.
It wasn't always so.
Oh, what? Really?
No. You gotta know a little bit of history. You can get it by walking around your town and looking at some letters at the top of buildings. There was, in every town, there was some group, the Italian club, the Belgian club, fraternal order of whatever, of workers. They didn't have insurance. They needed to band together in a brotherhood to help out others. And there were all kinds of men's organizations where men would band together in solidarity to help each other out. They were brotherhoods, they were fraternal, they were paternal. We don't have that now. They've all gone away, and not a single one has been established recently.
Steve, you just said that the red pill isn't one.
No, the red pill isn't one. We teach others. We show our philosophy, but it's kind of every man for himself. There is some altruism. A few of us old guys want to impart the information to younger men so they don't have to experience what we did and suffer the losses for their greater good, and so they can have families. But yeah, we've come to that impression that almost impossible to have a family these days, because you can't just find a woman that doesn't believe in divorce and marry her and then you're good, because no woman believes in divorce on her wedding day.
Yep. My ex certainly didn't believe on divorce when she was saying the vows. Certainly.
Yep.
Okay.
Mine.
So we have just now done something that I think is going to royally piss off a lot of people. We have called Nietzscheanism feminism, and Nietzscheanism is the core to a good chunk of society, not just
Yes.
the red pill. There's a lot of business people are the same way. I don't want to get into business people.
And not everybody in the red pill's Nietzsche.
Okay,
not everybody in the red
that's
pill's Nietzsche.
very true.
Okay, let me try and save us. Nietzscheanism is so prevalent in our modern world, in our society, that all of us think a little bit Nietzschean.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's in feminism. Is Nietzscheanism in the red pill? Yeah, because it's in the air we breathe. So by saying, oh, red pill is Nietzschean, okay, like everything is Nietzschean.
Well, I don't think a lot of the red pill guys would deny that it's Nietzscheanism. I think they might twist a little bit at the fact that it's also feminist. It's feminine. And I did call it feminine because it is men who wield objective truth. It is men who build civilizations. Men are the builders and creators and the civilizers. And Nietzscheanism cannot build things. You have to use something other than Nietzscheanism to do it, because Nietzscheanism itself, well, okay, I was talking with a philosopher friend of mine, and he noted that he never actually met a Nietzscheanism or a Nietzschean, somebody who actually just follows what Nietzsche teaches. I'm not talking Nietzsche-structuralism, just raw Nietzschean philosophy. And we kind of came to the conclusion after looking through some data and some he had some access to some journals, and he said, so really there's three things that happen to Nietzscheans. They splatter their brains across the ceiling. They cut themselves off from everybody in an attempt to prove that they can dominate their world on their own, and then eventually splatter their brains across the ceiling when they fail to achieve that ideal. Or they pick and choose the parts in Nietzsche that they like. The will to power is the most common one of these. And then they fill the holes with other philosophies that they've encountered along in life. I have encountered Nietzschean Christians, which, if you actually have read Nietzschean philosophy, makes zero sense, but I have encountered it. Because Nietzsche
just because they're boomers.
Yes. Oh, we're going to get into what the even Christian boomer have done to their kids in the name of following some of Nietzschean will to power stuff. That's going to be more towards the end when we're trying to tie this all up and make a point out of it. But yes, there is such a thing as a Christian Nietzschean, which would absolutely it would make Nietzsche blubber like a toddler, like because he hated Christians. Anyway, Steve, you were talking about meritocracy.
Yep.
I would call Nietzscheanism degenerate meritocracy, because in actual merit, you said something, you let it slip earlier. In actual meritocracy, when somebody achieves something, I give them more responsibility, and I also give them more authority or power.
Sure.
But can a Nietzschean ever
And
share
that's
power?
the way. Well, no, but that's the way it should be. If someone has the capability, capacity, and wields the power, or is skilled, you give them more responsibility. And as they grow, they get more responsibility. But the responsibility or authority or power you're giving them is not for their own sake. It's for the cause, the mission, or those under them, or some other purpose. But yeah, I mean, so meritocracy is not bad, but
I like it. I love it. But
yeah,
it is at odds with Nietzscheanism in certain ways, not always.
right,
There is a meritocracy hierarchy in Nietzscheanism, but it revolves around who can exercise the most power to achieve the most benefit for themselves. Then that person would have the highest merit.
sure.
If an interesting observation I made on this as I was writing my notes is that this degenerate meritocracy leads to another phenomenon we've seen in the men's space, where more responsibility is delegated to men, but there is no concurrent increase in power or authority of men. In fact, we've decreased it.
Are you talking about complementarianism?
Oh, yeah. Well, but that's how a Nietzschean would think. They would say, well, I need to give you more. I can give you more responsibility, but I can't give you more power to go along with it. And so
It's like somebody gives you a title, right?
yes,
But increases your responsibility with pretty much no pay raise.
yes, that's a practical example that a lot of people will have experienced in their lives. You get a better title, you get assigned more work, and your pay goes up by 50 cents an hour. Congratulations. And you still can't tell people what to do, right?
Uh-huh.
So, and I don't want to say that there is no link between masculinity and the exercise of power. There absolutely is. men do exercise power. But in order to build something, you exercise power in concert with other men. Okay. You combine the skills. Skills is a form of power, by the way, because I can take what I know and how to do it, and I can use that to build something. I can use that to create something. And creation is a form of power. Just ask the women about they keep throwing their ability to create babies back at us men. The feminists know that creation is a form of power. And it's primarily us men who are telling other men that it's all about you. No. Creation of civilization is a form of power. It's just not one where you yourself benefit above all other men.
Well, power is not bad,
Right.
but good men gain power and are given power, and they exercise that power on behalf of others, a group, their family, a bit
Yes.
themselves, but it's not self-serving. The other kind of power is totally self-serving. I gain power and I use it solely for my benefit. Or the pickup artist, I gain these skills to vet a lot of women, and I use my skills solely for my own sexual pleasure, gratification, notch count, whatever. That's completely self-serving. Now, on the other hand, you can strive to learn those same skills, how to relate to women, and use them to better your relationship and to maintain a strong marriage, a strong relationship for the future. So I think maybe that's the difference in the old days between the married red pill and the pickup artist side of it.
Oh, so you're saying that there's actually more than one red pill.
Yeah, the red
And
pill.
you're
What?
Uh,
You went silent for a bit.
oh,
You're good.
yeah,
Oh.
we're having internet issues today, guys.
Yeah, the red pill is not monolithic.
Well, and has the red pill? I don't know if the red pill's ever been monolithic. I mean,
I
because you were
don't
talking
think so.
Yeah, you're talking about the PUA versus married red pill. I think Shaw has talked about, he calls it the Tradcon red pill, which is a conversation that we're not going to get into today because we just don't have time. But, and then you have, it's not really the married red pill anymore, but it's Shaw would say Coach Greg Adams and his after pill kind of mentality would be an example of sort of men who are more on the another way you could describe it is the MGTOW guys. So because the MGTOW guys they just don't deal with women at all.
They're
So
Well, and
going
then
the
you
wrong
have the
way.
MRA,
yeah,
which is kind of more or less split off from the red pill now, I think.
yeah,
They're still adjacent. And the MGTOW are kind of split off from the red pill now, I would say.
yeah.
But, this is a perception of mine. No one has defined this. There's no exact rules to who's in the red pill and who's not.
Right.
Are the people who say they're not red pill actually in the red pill? I don't know.
The
Well,
descriptors are the problem. Come on.
the descriptions have always been the problem. That's a video we did a while back, guys. So, but Steve, you were saying, men are capable, we are capable of exercising power, and we do. And there is sort of an ultimate power that men have the authority to exercise in certain cases. But I find it curious. So I've talked to a lot of retired special forces dudes. I have an unusual amount of training with long range hole punchers, and I got it all from various branches, special forces. And I would always ask them, in a grid down situation, right? Because, we're here learning how to you do this activity, and the purpose is to defend yourself when no one else is around to defend you. So, but I would always ask them, what is the most important thing that you would do? What's the first thing you would do? But as you're preparing for a grid down situation, and not a one of them said, plan how I will dominate my region. All of them to a man say, who are your neighbors and who are your friends? Who is the community that you're going to get together with to help defend yourself with? These are dudes who have been out in the shittiest of the shit. They have been on the far end of supply lines where there is nothing out there for them. They're behind enemy lines. They've got nothing. And the first question they ask is, who are your friends? Why is that?
They realize that the individual is vulnerable, and no one can survive strictly by having power. And they're highly intelligent men. You have to be very intelligent to get through that. In a similar way, the lesser, okay, before I go there, the lesser trained people are the ones who say, oh, I'm going to dominate my area, and they seek power. So, as a similar analogy, there's levels of intelligence. The highest, the higher intelligence people, as they learn more and study something, the more they learn and study, the more they realize, I really don't know. There's a lot I don't know. So the more you learn, the less you think of yourself. But the people maybe who haven't studied as much or aren't quite as intelligent, they learn knowledge and they think, oh, now I have it. And they don't realize how little they know. Yeah, it's kind of the Dunning-Kruger effect in some ways too.
Oh, definitely. Well,
Mm.
but you said something interesting here, and I like reading the classics, and Marcus Aurelius he said this: you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. And I think that gets to kind of what the special forces guys are talking about, and one of the core problems of Nietzscheanism is this belief that we have power over outside events. Nietzscheanism is an external philosophy. It's a philosophy of really not dealing with oneself, but attempting to form the world, or form or conform the world to oneself through the exercise of power. So, but okay, I'm going to bring up a slide now. Finally, I know, first slide for a Plutarch talk. I can't help myself. I found this. I've described it before, but I finally actually found it. And here, okay. So it's this is a picture it's a meme, but it talks here about how psychopaths beat normies. They're secretive and subversive, treats normies like livestock, psychologically abusive. Okay, and psychopaths beat normies. Normies beat the autists. Now, autist is an internet term. This is a meme, of course, so I'm not using the medical term. We are using the internet definition of autist. normies identify outsider behavior, they enforce societal norms, and they cause mental exhaustion to the autists. But the autist beats the psychopath because they're immune to propaganda, they acutely notice patterns, and they're obsessive and studious. And particularly that immunity to propaganda could just be a fancy word for gaslighting in the case of a psychopath. Okay. And you'll often hear the Nietzscheans talk about the dark triad traits. They're in love with the dark triad. Well, the psychopath is a term for extreme dark triad. And occasionally you'll even hear the Nietzscheans talk about leveraging psychopathy. Well, there's a fun little thing that the autists have shown us. And if you've ever been on some of the darker corners of the internet, you've heard this phrase of weaponized autism. And it's not autism in the medical sense, but what it is these people have adopted a particular facet of autism, and that is the total indifference to the behavior of others. Now, I think we talked about this on.
I mean, indifference to the influence of others' behavior.
Yes. The indifference to the attempts of others to influence them. They're totally indifferent. And I mentioned the person of interest on Wednesday, and this one scene where one of the characters is talking about meeting his ex-wife and how he was prepared to, for the emotion of being sad or prepared for emotion from her. But in fact, what he got was pure indifference. And he said that hurt way more. And that is because indifference strips any ability for you to exercise power over that person. And weaponized autism is a favorite tool of the millennials. Now, we're going to get into why this matters as we come round to the conclusions here. But the reason I brought this up is it demonstrates really the ultimate weakness of Nietzscheanism. And that weakness is Nietzscheanism only works when everyone agrees to play by the rules of Nietzsche. When everyone agrees to play by the rules of the exercise of power. The moment somebody decides they don't care that you're exercising power, what do? You see this in the feminists blowing. You saw this in the feminists blowing up on Twitter for the past couple of weeks. They're shaving their heads. They're doing all. This is them reacting to the world's looking at their attempt to control them, and going, we just don't care. And now they're even more mad because the guys have all turned around to them on Twitter and said, yeah, go ahead, shave your heads. We don't care. We're still not fucking you. Right. And
no, they lost their power because we're not going to let you fuck us. Guys says,
and you think this gives you power over me?
Great. We don't want to.
Right.
And
so there's that Batman meme, right? The Batman meme. It's Bane, and you think this gives you power over me?
Exactly. And it's that's exactly what this is. And so you are watching an entire generation look. Sorry about that. You are watching an entire generation looking at the world around them going, I don't care. I just don't care anymore. I don't care about the here's another form of power exercise that you probably saw over the past 4 years. Pronouns. Do you know who removed pronouns from her Twitter profile last week?
No.
AOC.
Oh.
They don't have power anymore. The indifference.
Okay, say that. Okay, let me understand this. She had her different pronouns that she stated, and now she just dropped that. So now you can call her by normal pronouns again.
Correct. That is according to the rules of the left. She dropped her pronouns. You can call her a she now.
Oh,
Yeah, I never obeyed the pronouns, and I never cared when people try to shame me.
I guess.
I just didn't
So
care.
what you're saying is men, particularly, but society in general, became indifferent to all this pronoun bullshit.
Yes, they did.
And now the pronoun people have no power by no one's playing.
No one's playing the
those your
game anymore.
pronouns? I don't give a shit. I'm gonna call you what I'm just gonna use whatever I want to express myself. I don't care.
Exactly. Indifference is the ultimate destruction of the Nietzschean philosophy. Because if you don't play by the Nietzschean's rules of power, what do? They don't. The Nietzschean only knows how to interact with the world in terms of power. They have no framework for anything else. So if you meet them with utter indifference to their attempts to exercise power over you, they go, but what? Even why don't you care?
So
Why
isn't
aren't
it
you
all?
acting?
Isn't it also? But isn't this also a Gramscian use of power at the institutions to enforce that hegemony over you?
Yes, it is. But it's a use of power. The Gramscians adopted the Gramscians read Foucault and Derrida just as much as any of the rest of them. The disagreement was more over how, and not really the what the best way to achieve this was. Structuralism has a core component of power to it, and that's the concept of the power to change language is the power to change. It's where the book 1984 comes from. It's right. The power to change language is the power to change the human mind. And so if I can change the human mind with language, I can perfect it. But that means that language is the ultimate power in the universe.
Well,
So they're both
education.
Nietzschean, but one's more fundamentally Nietzschean than the other. One's more
Correct.
will to power, the other one's more just
Perspectivism.
yeah, okay.
So the Gramscians gained control of the educational institutions because they thought they're going to control the culture with that.
Correct.
What happens when the men become indifferent to education, higher education, and stop going?
Well, they lose their
Gaining
power.
that. They lose their power. Okay, the women are all indoctrinated. The men aren't there. Oh, the men are falling behind. No. You know what? Power innately is masculine. Wherever the men go is where society's going to go.
Yep.
I mean, collectively.
Yeah.
Not, and it's okay. It's in en masse. Maybe not. Men don't really wield collective power. It's the mass power of where the men are.
Well,
Does that make it more clear?
Okay, let me throw this one at you though. But wouldn't the smart Nietzscheans say that weaponized autism is just a particularly strong expression of power? That indifference is a particularly strong expression of power? I mean, if it's so powerful that it can negate power.
I'm sure. I guess they could use that as a tool in their arsenal.
Okay.
I don't think it's necessarily strictly Nietzschean, though.
It's
I
a
don't know that
tautology.
they'd recognize it.
Well, I want to bring up this argument because I'm sure somebody who's a Nietzsche fan will hit us with a comment or a screed about this. And the answer is actually very simple. If the strongest expression of power is to ignore the concept of power, then what is the point of power at all?
That's the whole point of Nietzscheanism in the first place. Oh, there is no truth except that truth.
Right.
It's internally inconsistent as a system.
That's yes, which is why I led off with, talking to some philosopher friends. We actually, as we were talking through Nietzscheanism, we actually just kind of arrived at this is an incoherent philosophy. That it is not a coherent system of thought. Yeah. What I find here, there's another thing. Go ahead.
Oh, just a thought. I don't know if this relates. When you talk about weaponized autism, a way to put that into practice on the micro scale is agree and amplify. When
Yep.
someone criticizes you, when you laugh and say, "Yep," and it's even more, you're indifferent. They tried to just jab you with that. You're indifferent, and you're agreeing, and you're amplifying, and you're making it funny, and you got no power over me. That's weaponized autism.
Sir, yes, sir. Weaponized autism is, and there's a reason why you see it being exercised at such scale on the internet. Like, if more than anything else, weaponized autism is why Trump won. So many people just became indifferent to the machinations of the left, and they voted how they were going to vote. And now there's some nuance to that data. We'll get into that towards the or as we get along here a little bit. But there's another observation I had, and I find this fascinating because most Nietzscheans are fascinated with Ayn Rand's work, particularly The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, but her objectivist philosophy actually understands the key weakness of Nietzscheanism. And that is that there is an objective reality. That perspectivism is a bunch of bullshit. So even a woman recognized the fatal flaw of Nietzscheanism. Uh, but so, I've often heard it said that, Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged is the favorite book of disaffected teenage boys. Okay, that's great. Fine, whatever. If that's the case, then Nietzscheanism is the favored philosophy of toddlers throwing their toys around the room and daring their parents to do anything about it. I mean, there's a reason why every parent who's ever lived will call the toddler years a contest of the wills. I don't know, Nick, how was your experience raising toddlers?
They always did that. Usually 2 or 3. They still do it, but it's just the answer is no, no, no.
And
You don't get your way. Redirect,
In
discipline,
indifference?
and
oh, hey,
sometimes indifference. Yeah, that'll really get them upset.
consequences.
Oh, consequences. Oh, shit.
Consequences. Didn't you guys just do a stream with Elena on consequences?
Yeah.
Yeah, we did do that.
That's a
Didn't
good stream. You know what? For once, I didn't have to participate, and I just enjoyed listening.
we? Lucky you, Steve. So, but here's the thing. Children properly reared and everyone agrees that proper rearing of children requires that you push them out of the toddler years and the toddler behavior. So not only is Nietzscheanism, here's another thing. I didn't even have this in my notes, but I just connected it right now. We often say that women stop developing mentally the moment they grow chesticles. Okay. So if what you're saying is that Nietzscheanism is feminine and women are children, and Nietzscheanism is the philosophy of toddlers throwing their toys around the room, Nietzscheanism is the philosophy of children, females. That's what it is.
Okay, you're just doing an analogy here, kind of a generalization. We know it's not absolutely true,
Yes.
but it's exaggerated to kind of prove a point and illustrate what certain people perceive and the truth in those perceptions. It's not
Yeah.
literal.
No. I mean, this is a philosophy stream. I got so into it that I forgot to put in my constant reminders that I speak in generalities, not in specifics. I'm sure there are people out there who think you're the exception. And by the way, if you think you are the exception, you are not the exception. As a general rule, har har har. But there's another sort of observation. If think of so the boomers are particularly responsible for this Nietzschean philosophy, although the Xers are the ones that actually really took it and ran with it. So one of the things that we see is that there is outsized participation in the boomers amongst the institutions. The boomers own colleges, lock, stock, and barrel.
Yes.
They own the government, and we will get into that here in a minute about the actual data on that. But the Xers, who were always looking up at the boomers, who dominated everything about the Xers' lives, said, well, we're not going to get into those, so we're going to take over the business side. And that plays better with the Nietzschean worldview anyway. So the boomers had a more idealistic take on Nietzsche. It was more like, well, we'll just use power just as much as we need to achieve our goals. Where the Xers are far more, yep, nope, this is intense competition. We got to go, 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 go. That's an Xer thing. And I want to point this out because we haven't talked about millennials yet, but we're going to get there.
Well, okay, let's illustrate. Let me illustrate this.
Please do.
I first graduated from college, December 1985. Entered the workforce 1986. Okay, you know what? Back then, we had this term called the Big Eight. Do you know what the Big Eight was?
No, I've never heard that term.
It was the Big Eight accounting firms. What
they call those the Big Four
now?
now.
The Big Four. Okay, and it was consolidation. A couple of them screwed up, and the Enron deal and other things. But then they got bought out, and they keep merging. We have the Big Four, and you look at the computer industry. How many PC makers were there in the 80s and 90s?
Dozens that I know of.
Okay, it's consolidated.
Yep.
So it's the consolidation of power. And this happened really in the last it's accelerated. I mean, it started in the 90s, but I think it really accelerated really over the last 20 years. The consolidations. There is not the competition in the various companies out there now that there used to be. There used to be big competitors, and now it's all consolidated in one big ass company.
Airlines, particularly after 2008.
Airlines. Okay, Minnesota. When I 86 again, there were two Minnesota airlines, Republic and Northwest. Okay, then Northwest bought Republic, so we had Northwest. And then Delta bought Northwest.
Yep.
So now it's Delta. And is TWA? Nope. Pan Am? Nope.
American.
Okay, you know what? It's all consolidation. There's just fewer competitors out there. Everything just is focused. And I don't know, is it time to talk about why I think the millennials are indifferent?
I do. It is time.
Okay. So boomer or an old Xer. Okay. Born in 62. So when I graduated again, 1986, I worked for it was kind of a mom and pop type atmosphere. The corporation had like 300 employees. We were the U.S. affiliate of the Canadian company. And the president in the U.S., I'm guessing he probably made 5, 8 times the amount I made, something in that range. I doubt if it was 10 times. Because I started out 30 grand. I doubt he would have been making 300.
Okay.
This is mid 80s. He's probably making 200 plus. That was good.
That's a
It was a
lot of
small
money in
town.
the 80s.
It was a lot of money. And yeah, that's kind of reasonable. And it was a family atmosphere, and they expected good quality work, but they cared for their people, and that was the atmosphere. And then as things progressed and corporations started getting bigger, and then this organization was eventually, well, we got bigger, and then they moved their offices to Houston, and we don't care about who goes and who comes back. I left before then, but then they came back. But then it was a direct subsidiary, basically right under the Canadian headquarters. And okay, then the CEOs and VPs, especially CEOs, were making 100 times, 500 times what an engineer was. So, like 1,000 times what a janitor makes. And they didn't care about you anymore. And, there was no family atmosphere. There was no, oh, you work here, you're dedicated, you do your job, you can retire from here in 30 years.
So the business
there was
didn't care
none of
about
that
you.
anymore. No. So the millennials, they didn't see the way it was when I started. All they see is the way it is now. And nobody gives a shit about you in business. It's all about the quest for power. And those assholes in the C-suite are making all the money, and they don't give a shit about me. And they're actually trying to lower my wage. I don't care. I'm indifferent. I'm just not going to work for a corporation. And you see this, Aaron Clary talks about this a lot.
He does.
No, don't go work for those guys. Set up your own shop. Be independent. And that resonates with a lot of the millennials. Now, they're even going so far as, I'm not going to go get that college education.
Yep.
Get a degree in accounting? No, I'm not going to go work for the Big Four and work 90 hours a week and get on the path to partnership or whatever. No, I'm not doing that. So that's why the millennials are indifferent. We've talked about men going their own way. How about let's talk about millennials going their own way?
We have a new MGTOW. Well, so guys, Steve's been talking, but I want to pull up a chart here, and it's a graph. It's a graph you've all seen before. Well, you two have seen before. Maybe some of our newer viewers haven't seen it yet. This is my favorite graph in the world. My favorite chart. And
Florida.
you want to even there we go. Okay. Baby boomers. This is all asset. This is an asset allocation by generation. For reference, the Federal Reserve uses a 20-year bucket for generations, so that if you wonder where the Gen Z is, they just started graduating high school, so they're not really on this chart. They're 0.1% of the asset allocation per the Federal Reserve and their methodology. So baby boomers own $78.1 trillion worth of assets, or 50% as of the end of 2023. As of the so 50% of all private assets in the United States. There was a thing that it's a lesser known Warren Buffett quote, but what he said is that money amongst the very rich, money is used primarily as a way to keep score. It's primarily a way to see who is doing the best amongst the wealthy. Well, okay, Buffett, I agree with some other things you said, and I agree with this one too. And the data says that the boomers have been, as a generation, incredibly Nietzschean in their views on how things should go. Aaron Clary posted a see if I can find it. I think I have it. He posted this great. It's another millennial meme, and it's basically a terrorist and a soldier walk into a bar or walk into a restaurant, and I turn around and I shoot my son in the face twice. And I have a gun with 2 bullets, and I turn around and shoot my son in the face with it twice. I forget what the exact quote is, but it's that basic idea is that the boomers, they are so inert, they're so hopelessly bound to Nietzschean philosophy that they would much rather in the face of danger shoot their own children, and because, well, hey, if it's what actually ends up happening in the financial sense is, well, why would I give my children any money? They should be able to go out there and stand on their own. And if they can't, that's a them problem, not a me problem. This is my money. I'm going to spend it how I want to spend it. Okay. And that's how you end up with a graph that's this unbalanced. The baby boomers are dying, and they have been dying for years now. And they still, they've been dying at the time this data was made. They've been dying for 3 years as a generation. Actually, it's a little longer than that, I think, but in the Federal Reserve terms, they've been dying for 3 years, and they still control half the wealth in the United States.
How many people of the boomer generation we actually seen die lately, and you knew they were well off, multi-millions, and they didn't live extravagantly.
Yeah.
But what did they do with their money in their waning years? Nothing. Nothing. They kept it. They see people around them who are poor or maybe falling on hard times, or a family member. Did they come in and say, hey, I can help out a little bit here? Or did they give it towards some foundation or something? Did they work towards something? No, they didn't. They just kept the money and kept counting it in their bank accounts and did nothing with it.
Well,
And then
they might
they
give the
died.
foundation only for tax write-offs.
Well, right.
There's
no
Nick
sense
is
of
very
legacy.
Right.
There's no sense. There's very little sense of legacy among the boomers.
Yeah. And they look at their children and they go, well, if you can't survive in this world, that's too bad. You shouldn't need my help. You're a strong kid, aren't you? Right. So now we're saying all this because we're trying to point out that there is a sea change happening in the generations. The thing to understand, and we've talked about this before, is I'm gonna pull up this chart here. You guys have seen this. This is my edit of this chart with, this is the demographic of women who can have babies, and this is the demographic of, where we'll be 15 years from now. The demographic that will be having babies 15 years from now. But here's an interesting thing. The boomers are 65 to about here, 65 to 89. What's happening to that part of the pyramid? It's shrinking rapidly. The boomers are dying. And the reason this matters, and when I initially talked about this episode, and when I was talking about it on Saturday, I said, this episode is Nietzsche, and there's the keys to the future. And this is what I mean. We looked at this data on Steve, your gaps show that I thought was great, but
yeah,
we'll look at it again because I want to make a point here. And it's a point that people need to particularly, in fact, this is really a message for the right. This is a message for the red pill. The Gramscians are winning. If you think if you think that because Trump won that you're winning, you're wrong. And here's why. The Nietzscheans are all in here. 45 plus. Look who voted for Trump. You say, oh, well, that's not a big margin. We're talking, 1 to 2% is millions. So, we're still talking about a lot of people, and this generation is dying. This generation right here, the 45 and under, will control the vote completely in 2028. And this is a potential disaster. And the reason for that is we talked about this a couple of times over the past couple of shows. The millennials are utterly uninterested in Nietzscheanism as a generation. These are this is the team building generation, and you see them at work already. They just naturally form teams at work. It's in their DNA. They can't help themselves. And the Gramscians are offering them something that looks like it's compatible with their view of the world. I'm not going to say that Gramscian, Marxism is good, but the Marxist concept of collective has an inherent appeal to the millennial generations and the Gen Z. If
it's not appeal to pure self. It's not an appeal to pure self.
Correct.
So they have something that's the ancient bait of Marxism.
Yes. It is what's always destroyed Marxism.
And Nietzscheanism is unappealing to those who basically left to fend for themselves.
Well,
when there's
okay,
nothing.
I want to make a point.
It's not nothing, but
in the U.S., socialism. Oh, that's bad. Well, speaking as an older guy. Oh, those socialists. We hate socialism. We like capitalism. That's Nietzschean. Now, I want to contrast that with patriarchy. True patriarchy is not capitalism. It's not pure capitalism, and it's not pure socialism. But there are aspects of socialism because the patriarch cares for the people under him, and he'll transfer wealth and help, and it's not all for one. So we have this concept, the older people, that socialism is bad because socialism equals communism. No, it doesn't. But socialism taken to the extreme is communism, and it's not good. Capitalism taken to the extreme is also not good because it's a consolidation of power and it results in tyranny. So the pendulum is swinging back among younger people towards a more socialist type of view.
Yes, sir.
And the key is, are they going to go too far? The answer is probably.
Yes. The stats are not in the favor of the capitalists on this one. And this is why I call this the key to the future. And when I said this before when I was talking about this video, and I'll say it again. This video is not attempting to say that one of these futures is going to happen. Any political party could pick up what I'm saying here and wield this as a weapon to bring the young generation in its doors. But whatever that political party does, the first thing they will do is reject Nietzscheanism. Because it is the fundamental philosophy that is driving the millennials away from wherever it is practiced. And you can say, oh, well, that makes the millennials bad and weak. Fun fact, you know what a mob does You know what a mob of weak people does to one strong man? Shreds him.
I mean, like what happened at the Reign of Terror
Yes.
and the French Revolution.
Exactly. Eventually, you find your way to the guillotine. If you're lucky, if they don't just tear you to pieces right there.
And
So-
the first leaders of the mob turned against the first leaders of the mob. And they ended up in the guillotine. But just because you're head of the herd does not mean you're immune, because the
Nope.
herd could turn on you.
The herd frequently does. So
That was a tactic of many communist countries, was to have these extremely immoral, what I call useful people, but once they get power, they were taken out.
they have to.
Yeah.
But they have to, because the moment that the true believer figures out that you are actually just taking power, that you're not interested in implementing the ideal that the true believer believes in, the true believer is going to turn on you. The classic example of this was Stalin.
Mhm.
He used the true believers, got in power. He was part of the apparatus. He bided his time. And then the Russian version of the Night of the Long Knives happens. And all of a sudden, there's all the true believers are dead. Leon Trotsky is a famous example of this. He killed him with an ice axe, which is very Russian.
And he was living in Mexico.
Correct.
Long arm. Oh, we can't even afford this guy to be alive on the other side of the world.
Yeah. So I don't know which party's going to figure this out, but do not think that just because the Democrats lost this election that they won't figure this out, because for them, rejecting Nietzsche is a very easy thing to do. They don't have to give up on many of their core tenets. They have to give up on some. And I've been monitoring Twitter, and they're already starting to figure it out. The sort of Nietzsche-structural components that they've taken about perspectivism, i.e. pronouns and all of that, they're starting to turn their backs on it. It's not all at once. It's not uniform. And there's a great fight going on. But remember what I said earlier about AOC taking down her pronouns. That's a signal. Okay. The Democrats can own the next cycle, the next 100 years. And all they have to do is make some minor modifications to their political theory. Yeah, it'll pull them back to the center a bit. It wouldn't be all bad for the right, but for the right has to completely redefine itself.
And just wait. Come February, March, April,
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be a wave of disillusionment and dissatisfaction.
Yep.
with Trump. Euphoria is gone. Everybody, it's just inevitable. I don't know how it's going to happen exactly. I got some theories. The economy is probably going to turn down then. The left is kind of, they're escalating things in some of these wars to leave Trump with a
A mess.
difficult situation, a mess. Yeah, there's other things. And, the left was defeated, but they're not without their influence. And they're planning, man, it's even, just leave it left, right. The Gramscians, the Nietzscheans, you could just say the Gramscians are not, they lost the battle. They didn't lose the war.
In fact, the data is very firmly on the Gramscian side. And that's one of the messages that I wanted to bring, particularly, yes, I understand that I'm kind of raining on everyone's parade right now. Rah, rah, we won. You don't understand why you won. The Gramscians went way too far, and they got penalized for it. But Trump's margin of victory in the popular vote was not all that big. It's only 3 million or so right now. It's not, yes, his electoral college victory was big, but that's kind of how the electoral college works when you win the popular vote. The House, I've been watching the House races. He could end up with a split House. Like it, the actual lower level data on this does not say that the Republicans won some sort of sweeping mandate to rebuild the nation. The Gramscians are out there, and the millennials are a huge generation, and they do vote. They are a massive generation. They are right now the biggest generation alive. Now, the right capitalism has a story to tell. It has a very powerful story to tell the millennials. And I would love to get that out there. But until we drop this fascination with Nietzsche and the destruction of Nietzsche, the right has no compelling story to tell the millennials. Because there is a story of how we can use capitalism and apply all these resources to rebuilding civilization. That is a story that is going to play very, very, very well to the millennials. They eat that stuff up like it's crack cocaine. Okay, they can't help themselves.
Well, there's going to be this transfer of wealth. Gotta happen. So boomers can die and it'll just be passed on to the Xers and a lot to the millennials. It'll happen. Or the boomers could say, oh, gee, we can use our wealth in our waning years for good, and we can actually help out these younger people and, leave a legacy. Is that going to happen? Not a chance.
Can I tell you? I'll tell you what's happening. I'll make this an ecclesiastical
there it
note
is.
here. So, a lot of the guys that I'm associated with on X, we don't hate boomers, but yeah, we kind of hate the boomer philosophy. And a lot of these effeminate, cocksucking pastors, probably don't do that, but yeah, they're pieces of crap. I'll call them that because they're cowards. And all they care is maintaining their portfolio, staying in power, and using their power and their bureaucracy. Even the Nietzschean part that might be kind of conservative, they team up with kind of the Gramscian kind of wokest guys to shut down millennials and young Generation X. They shut them down. There's not openings. They don't want you. And if you're not going to get in line, they will crush you or try to crush you. Because only they, in their post-war consensus, can stay in power. Their Nietzscheanism and their Gramscianism. And they have actually nothing to offer. They have nothing to offer.
Except their continued existence and a lot of millennials complain about this, that their parents hold the portfolios over them. Well, if you don't behave how I want you to behave, you won't be part of the inheritance. It's actually worse than that, though, because demographically, what you want is the wealth transfer to occur in the child's 30s, because that's when the child is able to make the most impact in their lives and their children's lives with that money. By holding on to the money till the day you die, you hand it to your children in their mid 50s. At 55, that child is already as established as they're ever going to be. Their kids are either in college or completely moved out already, so you're not helping with the kids. You're not helping anything. And what they have found, and the banks have started to do research on this, is that when they get these things, they get these assets, they just sit on them. They don't do anything with them.
Yeah, my dad died 9 months ago. And yeah, I got a chunk of money.
Have you done anything with it?
Do I need it? It's not a huge amount of money,
Oh, okay. Doesn't
it's
matter.
Around $100,000. But what am I doing? Sitting on it. I don't have anything to do with it. Proves the point.
Right. So, this whole thing, this is kind of the point that I've been trying to get to over these past 3 episodes, and I know this has been probably 5 hours or more of video at this point to watch through. And yes, I know we're dry, but the reason that I waited specifically until after the election and the reason why I said that this election doesn't matter is I didn't have all like the voter data back then, of course, but I understood the generations. I understood how they think in general. I've been studying them since I was 14, although my dad will tell you that he was trying to teach me sooner, but I didn't really start picking up the lessons till I was 14. But, I've been following this that's 24 years now. So to me, it was just apparent that this election didn't matter, and it probably won't. But I am more concerned about what happens after the coming crisis. I am more concerned about the world that we build for ourselves. And as an ardent capitalist, as an ardent liberty seeker, I do not want to see the Gramscians win. And I am telling you right now that there is an absolute guaranteed way that they can lose. But you boomers out there, if any of you are listening, if you Xers out there, and even you older millennials who we call Zennials sometimes, Xer millennials, if you're listening and you're whole hog on the Nietzschean worldview, understand this. Your view is going away one way or the other. That is an inescapable reality of the future. The millennials have no, as a generation, have no interest in your philosophy. They've looked around at the damage that it has done, and they said, we're not interested in continuing this damage. We will do something else. And they will do something else. So if
millennials want stability, we have none of it.
Yes, stability. We have none. We want it. The Gramscian Marxist collective appears to offer that. And you can say, oh, well, no, it doesn't. Personally, I would agree with you. But you're not offering
That's what it offers, but it can't deliver.
Right. But you're not offering them an alternative. You're offering them more chaos, more destruction. They're not the choice is between the illusion of stability and the outright knowledge of coming chaos and destruction. They're going to pick the illusion of stability because that's what they want. Whether or not it gives it to them doesn't matter for what they're choosing. You have to drop the Nietzscheanism because there is a story of capitalism that is not Nietzschean.
The extreme socialism can work in a very limited situation. Sweden was a good example. Sweden in the 70s, 80s, 90s, even 2000s, very socialist, very stable, high tax, high quality of life, but a high trust society.
Oh,
probably the key. Then they started big immigrant wave, but they didn't change their socialist safety net, and not working so well anymore. Okay, could it work in the U.S.? No. Because we do not have a high trust society. We are starting in a different place, and we cannot enter this type of socialism for stability like the Swedes did. And even theirs, it's coming to an end.
Well, that's the false promise of all Marxism, right? I mean, yeah, you can get a temporary stability, but you're not. It's eventually the Marxist ideals run past their ability to provide stability, and they turn into bleeding hearts, and they have to expand their collectivism to help improve the lives of others, and that is also a key part of communist theory. So it doesn't surprise me that it's falling apart because Marxism in all its forms basically refuses to admit that human nature is a thing, which goes back to this idea that you can perfect the human mind, which you can't, and stop trying. But yeah, I think that the best path, the shining path, I guess, the way forward for capitalism in particular. Look, the Democrats and the Gramscians, they have their path forward. They're going to make some simple changes and they're going to win the millennials in a landslide in the next election, very likely. Okay. Unless we on the right figure out that Nietzsche is dead and that we should probably leave him on the ash heap of history
Nietzsche's
where he
dead.
belongs.
Nietzsche's dead. I like
Nietzsche
that
is dead.
Yeah, not the other way around.
Right. Nietzsche,
Yeah.
the Uberman could not save himself. And so my call to the millennials, to you millennials and you Gen Zs watching is this is kind of my closing thought. We, the millennials and the Gen Z, must adopt weaponized autism. We must become indifferent to the Nietzscheans, to the Gramscians. And here's to the sophists. We did a video on sophistry. Nietzschean philosophy is sophistry. The whole concept that simply might makes right is sophistry. We talked about that before. Okay. Instead, for you millennials out there, instead of embrace the decline, try this one. Fuck the decline. Fuck it. Fuck them all. Fuck the decliners. I'm done with them. I have no use for them.
It's already happening. Well, kind of among them. But what are men doing in the decision for marriage? More and more of them are saying, fuck that. No way.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Indifferent.
Yep.
I'm not playing that game. And that's what the millennials are going to be doing. And the Z even more so. Nope.
Yes.
Not playing that game.
Yes. Fuck the decline. Fuck the decliners. Fuck them all. They have nothing for you but more death, more destruction, more chaos. So fuck them.
Well, that's kind of what I told my dad when I talked about the OPC. I said,
Yeah, fuck them.
I said, hey, where's my kids? That's right. Fuck them. Yeah, where's my kids? Yeah, you boomers. Fuck you.
Yeah. That's my closing thought. I realize that this might seem a little anticlimactic, and yeah, we spent 5.5 hours building up to this. When we make a point, we make our fucking point. And the point here is fuck the decline. Particularly to you millennials. The boomers, they're already dying. They're not going to see the world that we have to create. The Xers, they're going to be elderly if they make it that far. Okay. The world that comes is our world. We get to choose what that world looks like. It is the Xers in particular right now who want you to embrace the decline. Fuck them.
Yeah, well, the Xers don't have that much money.
That's
They
true.
got quite a bit. But a lot of the Xers are pretty heavy in debt.
Yes,
because they wanted to live the high life. And
well, if you're going to die tomorrow, why not?
In a decline, I think the Xers are going to be some of the first people to really suffer because, yeah, those debts are going to come due. Younger people probably don't have the same amount of debts. Yeah, they got student loan debt, but they don't have big household debt. We're already seeing people are stopped. What's that?
If they do have a house, their mortgage debt's probably really bad.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's going to
Probably.
be two classes of millennials. There's going to be the ones who had a house going into this, and then there's going to be the ones that didn't. And it's the ones that didn't that are going to come out smelling like roses.
People are already really cutting back on purchasing cars.
Yes, sir. Lots of
Oh
data coming
man,
out over
the
the past
auto
month.
industry is hurting so big.
Yes, sir.
People can't afford these $70,000, $80,000 cars.
Steve, data point on that. The banks right after the election opened up the taps on subprime auto loans. There's a tweet about it from a car guy I follow.
It's not going to
It's
make
not
it
really
any
working
better.
though.
I didn't say it was working. I just said that's what but this all goes to that point. This all goes to that point. So to you declinists out there, get fucked, stay fucked. I have no use for you. If you want to join us, if you want to help, come along. We'll work with you. But if you're just out there pushing a narrative of embrace the decline, get fucked, stay fucked.
And yeah, the decline is going to come. Biggest asset you can have in difficult times is your skills. Keep your
And
wits
friends.
about you. Oh yeah, friends, and your skills, because you not only use the skills for your own benefit, you use them on behalf of a group.
Yep.
And you team up with other people who have skills that you don't have.
Yep.
You can accomplish way more together. That's
Precisely.
going to be the way, just like the special forces guys do. They have immense skills, but they're looking for the group and they use their skills on behalf of the group.
Precisely. That's all I have to say today. That's all I have to say for the past 3 weeks and probably 6 hours of video now. Do you guys have anything else you want to add before we sign off for the day?
You're already seeing a large walking away in my generation in the church, particularly these big NAPART churches like the OPC, PCA. We're walking away because you're full of crap. Your Nietzscheanism, your anti-patriarchy, and you just hate young men that have balls and want to build something and will say something that ruffles your feathers. Fuck you. We're going our own way and we're going to build something better.
Millennials going their own way. Steve, you nailed it.
Hey, that's the new MGTOW. Maybe we have to come up. Maybe we have to come up with another acronym for that because that one's taken, but we'll work on it.
Well, Steve, sometimes appropriating acronyms and recasting them is the right thing to do. We'll see. We'll see how this one goes. But so, Wednesday, I believe we have Nick. You're up again for Leaders Part 2.
Yeah, Leaders Part 2. Talk about biblical leadership. Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll come up with segues from this one into that one. I'm sure.
Oh, yeah.
It sounds like you've got some things to say on this subject.
Oh, yeah.
And
am I saying I'm the perfect leader out there and always exemplify it? No. But
no, none of us are.
But there's some principles I want to bring forward, and it'll be real interesting.
I'm looking forward to this one. I really enjoyed our leaders discussion last week, so I'm looking forward to finishing it out.
You know, an interesting observation of our time doing these streams. Yeah, we started out doing topics, and it wasn't intentional, but it's everything we've done is just kind of weaves together in a tapestry. We didn't do this intentionally. We had no idea where it was going, but we keep talking, touching back on same points we made in the past. Oh yeah, we developed this concept here and we build upon it. So for those of you who are just tuning in now, there's a lot of good stuff in our early episodes, and it's really timeless. It's not, there's no expiration date on what we talk about.
Yep.
Yeah, we're
And
not much on the latest kerfluffle that's going on in the world and all that other crap. We're not
you mean
really
we
into
don't
that.
gossip for hours on end?
No. That's
We want to make our point. I mean, all three of us have day jobs. All three of us have other things to do with our lives. So we don't have the opportunity to sit for hours and idly gossip. So one of the cool things about that is it's been a forcing function. It forces us to come to create our points and make sure that we make them, because we only get a limited amount of time to with you, our audience out there, to make these points. I enjoy that process personally. So, oh, and then what do we have on Monday? I think this is kind of an all three of us. I don't know that anyone's leading this, but
I got the idea. There was like, yeah, that sounds fun. So it isn't exposing the narrative, but it'll give you something to talk about as you're gathering around the table around Thanksgiving. We're talking about flat earthers. We're going to expose the narrative of the flat earthers.
just in time too, with the upcoming IFT-6 launch from SpaceX, where we're going to get all sorts of really cool views from Starship of Earth. And you know what? Once we've disposed of flat Earth, we would probably have time to dispose of other conspiracy theories out there. It's fun. It's fun to take reason and logic and data and, turn it on the stupid people. So that's our Monday show. We will not be doing a show on that Wednesday because, frankly, you all are probably traveling anyway. And Turkey Day is the day after, and I know we'll be getting ready to head out. So, and Nick, I think you're either traveling on Wednesday or you just have gotten back or something like that. I don't.
Yeah, I'll have my kids. So no.
Right. Yeah.
No.
So yeah. This particular episode is probably going to be a little contentious. Please leave us a comment if you want to debate us on anything we said in any of our episodes. But on this one too, please drop us a comment. We would be happy to pull you on up and we can have a conversation. Might get a little Thunderdome because we don't hold back. But we would love to have you up. We'll talk about it. We will be respectful, but we will push you. Other than that, if you like what you heard tonight, if maybe you heard something a little different out there than what you're used to hearing, drop us a like. And if you want to hear more, you can subscribe. There will be more like this out there. So yeah.
Here, guys.
Okay. We'll see you later.
Yep. We'll see you Wednesday.